How did feudalism vary across different regions of medieval Europe? Feudalism in medieval Europe was like a big puzzle, with each piece fitting differently depending on where you looked. It was not the same everywhere, and that makes it interesting to see how local customs, politics, and economy shaped it. At its core, feudalism was about land and loyalty. Kings gave land called fiefs to nobles or lords in exchange for their promise of loyalty and military help. Those nobles then divided their land among vassals, often knights, who promised to serve and protect. Peasants and serfs worked the land, growing food and providing services, in return for protection and the right to live on the land. But how this system played out varied a lot from place to place. In France, for example, the system changed a lot during the 11th century. Power became more divided, with smaller regions controlled by local lords called castellans or seigneurs. These lords often collected dues and administered justice themselves, making their power very personal. Some regions, like Normandy and Flanders, kept a more centralized system where vassals directly owed loyalty to the king. Loyalties could be complicated, with vassals pledging allegiance to multiple lords, which led to the idea of a liege lord whose authority was higher than others. Across the English Channel, feudalism was more tightly controlled by the king after William the Conqueror took over in 1066. The English system was closely linked to the manorial system, where large estates called manors were the main economic units. Lords kept a strong grip on land and obligations, which helped keep political stability. Serfs worked the land, and their duties were clearly defined, making the system more organized. In Germany and Italy, feudalism was less uniform. The Holy Roman Empire was a patchwork of many small territories, each with its own local lords. Nobles had a lot of independence, and the emperor's power was often weak. This meant that loyalty and landholding could vary greatly from one area to another. Spain's feudal system was shaped by the Reconquista, the Christian effort to reclaim land from Muslim rulers. Landholding and military duties became more connected to defending frontiers. Lords in Spain often had a more militarized role, and their power was tied to their ability to defend borders. In Eastern Europe, especially in Russia, feudalism came later and looked different. Princes and boyars, or nobles, controlled large estates, and serfdom was harsher. And like knights in Western Europe, the Russian system was more about agricultural estates and less about castles and knights. Serfs were often bound to the land with little chance of freedom. Economic differences also played a role. Some manors had serfs who could not leave or sell their land, while others had peasants called kouloni who had more rights. As money became more common in later medieval times, rents sometimes shifted from goods and labor to cash payments. This change caused tensions, as lords tried to enforce stricter controls and taxes, leading to peasant revolts. The church was a big landowner too, and its influence varied. In some regions, bishops and abbots acted as lords over their own lands, adding another layer to the feudal hierarchy. This made the social structure even more complex. So, while the idea of land exchanged for service was the same across Europe, how it was carried out depended a lot on local customs, politics, and economy. Each region had its own way of shaping feudal relationships, which affected daily life and social structures in many different ways.